Hello everyone, back again. I'm doing a video it's a reaction video on something called Yu-Gi-Oh! DM Top 10 Most Supported Characters 5-Year Analysis from June 27, 2025 by Dual Sanctuary. It has 113 likes and 1,761 views. So it talks about characters, top 10 characters. This is going into something else. So, here we go.
Past 5 years.
Just gonna listen to whatever.
Let's get started.
Probably gonna actually. No, I gotta start recording this.
Alright.
Because I'm reading and writing too.
Characters from your vision to chaos worldwide. Events. Also, we get to the list of CG cards to see how futures are in good shape. Rankings. If you're wondering how I arrived at all these numbers, it's all explained in the first video of the series. And links to every part are in the description. Alright, just missing out on the top 10. Starting us off at number 11 is Mako Tsunami with 8 super cards. Overall, the time Mako
Yeah, Mako.
Fury of the Carnation.
Green cards.
Season 1.
Yeah, it's,
About 2 years later in Tools from the Deep.
yeah, they really wait too long to make support. I mean, especially if it's not broken, just make it like whatever.
Strategy individual opponent to just one monster, and I can look at who's coming from. Since that effect directly references what happened in the show, where Yuki's field is filled so only one monster's arm was usable. I always like anime references like this, but still, I hope the next week will support gives his deck a more dynamic win condition, one that doesn't rely so much on preventing your opponent from playing the game. Next, we've got 3 characters started 9 support cards each. We'll go through them one by one. First up is Merrick. He received a dedicated wave of Sword and Legendary Duelist Rage of Ra, which added 7 new cards to his lineup. Most of them are centered around his Egyptian god, Winged Dragon of Ra, but there are also callbacks to his iconic slime cards from the anime. The standout here is Egyptian god Slime, a fantastic multi-ability duel against Yuki, where Merrick's with the slime version of Obelisk and Tormentor. Outside of that set, Merrick picked up 2 more cards from 11 releases.
Okay, so now he's talking about the god cards. I was reading something about scripted sports. The slimes, the ancient chant, the millenniums. Yeah, I really like how he's doing this.
And right now, Ross feeling less like a confined beast and more like a retired museum exhibit. And speaking of museum exhibits, tied with Merrick is his sister, Ishizu. She received 2 more support cards with relevant in-game scores and Gravekeeper's inscription in full Hypernova. Now, Gravekeeper cards could technically be counted towards Ishizu, Merrick, or even Obi-Wan, but I decided to place them under Ishizu,
Ishizu, if you want to count her broken ass Agito, Kelbeck, and Agito, Kelbeck, and Mudora, and all that for Tearlaments. Ishizu Tearlaments or whatever, that was cool. Yep.
Ishizu's deck is sadly gathering dust right there in her own museum exhibit. Alright, enough about the ancient past. Let's fast forward a bit to a more technological era, because tied with the E-Star family outline support cards as a character I definitely didn't expect to make the top 10. Esmeralda and his Jinzo archetype.
Oh yeah, Jinzo got a lot of them.
But it turns out all of it came out early in the time
Between 10, 9, and 8.
back in 2020. And part of the reason I probably thought he didn't get anything is because the power level of these cards really doesn't feel like 2020.
Right.
As my first received 2 of course, Psychic Wave and Jinzo Layered, the first extra deck version of Jinzo. But its biggest upgrade came in Legendary Duelist Rage of Ra, which introduced 7 new cards to the archetype. Some of them are pretty cool, but overall it was enough to make Jinzo a playable standalone strategy. So please allow me a short detour to talk a little bit more about Jinzo itself. I've actually had an idea in my head for years now on how Jinzo could be also one of the first boss monsters in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! But as time went on, trap cards became less relevant and tribute summoning became too slow. So Jinzo kind of faded away. So what can we do to bring it back while still staying true to the original? There are of course some obvious upgrades. Make a version that's easier to search and special summon, that indicate trap cards no matter where they are, even in the graveyard, since many traps nowadays have effects in the grave. But there's one more type of effect that exploded in popularity over the past 8 years. Hand traps. What if a future Jinzo could negate effects that activate in the opponent's hand? Or just the one that responds to your plays? I think that would be a really cool direction, and it ties perfectly into the anime, as Peroba's brothers were literally spying on his opponent to give him knowledge of their hands, which would make this kind of effect thematically fitting. Of course, a card that can negate hand traps would be insanely powerful and potentially game-breaking. So Konami would absolutely have to lock the heck out of it to a pure Jinzo strategy to prevent it from being exploited in other decks. But still, how cool would that be? Plus, an effect like that could actually make Jinzo a more beginner-friendly archetype. It would help new players ease into the modern game by reducing the pressure of navigating around hand traps, something that's often cited as a major turn-off for newcomers or people returning to the game. Especially early on, we are still learning the basics. That can lead to some brutal negative first impressions. Anyway, that was my little Jinzo rant. Let me know in the comments what do you think of this idea, and how would you bring Jinzo back in today's game? Let me know in the comments. Next up we have 2 more characters starting at 11 support cards each. First up is Bandit Keith. Over the past 5 years, several of his manga cards were printed across different sets, 5 in total. But his biggest boost came from the introduction of a brand new archetype, Max Metalmorph, inspired by his Luna's Kingdom duel against Joey Wheeler. These are the Metalmorph cards I chose to categorize under Bandit Keith, since they felt more in line with his playstyle than Joey's. I also counted the new Max Metalmorph traps towards Keith rather than Joey, since the whole strategy feels like it was designed around him. I really hope Konami keeps this going with the retrains of his most iconic monsters, like Barrel Dragon and Slot Machine, and builds out the synergy with Max Metalmorph cards even further. Next tied with Bandit Keith is none other than Solomon Modo. He received a massive wave of 10 cards in 2024's Infinite Forbidden, introducing the brand new Millennium archetype,
I wish he
a
got
powerful new
his
version of the
Secret Dragon
unstoppable
or whatever.
Exodia Incarnate. This archetype was inspired by the final arc of the original series, set in ancient Egypt, paying homage to an epic storyline. The next core set added 1 more card to the archetype, Heart of the Blue Eyes, bringing the total to 11. And we already know another one is on the way, Soul of Gaia the Fierce Knight, which was released as a feed jump promo in the OCG. With those kinds of exclusive promos, it's always hard to say when they'll show up in the TCG, but once it does, Grandpa's total would go up to 12. But here's something interesting.